Hi, everyone. Um, it's here we are again, right? I just said I know so many of you from seeing you in different places, and I just want to quickly share um, my journey of grief because I've been in recovery March 29th. I will be in recovery for 21 years, and that is a long time, so and I say this all the time. I used to say it in meetings, it's so easy, and this isn't, let me start by saying that this isn't particularly for death only. Grief, when you lose a person in recovery, we lose so much. We lose relationships, and because you're working as I'm recovery. Many of you are clinical, many of you are working on different levels, but we know loss is loss, whether it be a job, a relationship, our children. I don't have to get into it because you all have this experience. So loss is anything that, causes that hole in your soul that you just reach for things that are not good for you to heal. So I would say that the first 15 years of my recovery were very normal. They were normal struggles. I had really happy days. I had days that were challenging. And I used to always say this stuff is so easy to talk about when everything's going pretty well. It's easy to preach when it's going good. And then in 2020, there was a tsunami came over my life, and just, I lost my in May of that year, I lost my little recovery puppy. I had her for 15 years, and we all know how I love our dogs, and she was my go-to. So I honestly thought that was the worst thing that was going to happen to me, and I was sad. And then in July, my nephew died of an overdose, 21 years old, a twin, my brother's son, and my sister-in-law, who was like we used to call her smother instead of mother, like that little helicopter mom. And she was fun. And we had 30 years of a relationship together. So it was a family. My parents were devastated. That was the family that was fractured. And then the next year, my dad died. And then the next year, that mama, that smother, the mother that I was telling you about, who lost one of her twins, she died from the trauma of losing one of her sons. So, I can talk about it now. And I think to myself, I even look back and I could just picture it as this, like an iceberg, and just a chip of my whole world just floating away. It was like a big piece of these people that I spent every day with. We're a big Italian family. We're always together. And I can't describe it. I don't have to describe it. You see it every day, but you feel like you're never going to be okay. And you also, me, knowing what I know, working in this industry, I felt like all I did was get into gear every time and stop helping, get planning funerals, doing what I had to do to, working on my recovery. But I had a good foundation, thank God. So when we're working with people, and I work with 45 women who are in brand new recovery. So the first thing I always say about grief, and again, I'm not clinical, so don't, this is merely experience in recovery. The first thing is, your heart's broken and you never feel like it's going to get better. And there's no time frame. For me, there was sometimes people say things, and the people going through it really take it as offensive. I can't think of another word to say right now, but they're never the right words. So I just basically I just kept doing what I always did. I cried and I got up and I kept moving, and I cried and I got up and I kept moving. It was like this pattern that I got myself to just get through what I was going through. So now in the bigger picture, with grieving, like I said, as a grieving and recovery, especially because now every process is individual, right? You work with so many different people. Their recovery looks different. Their grieving looks different. Some people move like I did. Some people can't get out of bed. Some people, you've seen it all. You've seen every different angle. You've seen it through every different lens. Um, I think the biggest, what I relied on for myself, and when I work with the women who all come in the same situation. It's like, so my 12 step was my foundation. I'll always have that. But after 21 years, I needed to build on that. So I have spiritual recovery. I have networks. I have physical recovery. I have a lot of different processes that I share with people, and it's up to them to find what's taking them to a place where they can sort of deal at first, relive, stop reliving it. Like I have to stop rewinding it in my head. And that's that. There were so many different stages. At first, I would just keep playing over the first phone call, with my nephew, and just being so heartbroken. But, just to move on, to move to where I am today. And I don't mean it took, like I said, it's 2025, and now I can talk about it. But the things that helped me the most, I sit with my friends in recovery, the things that I have, and this is probably one thing I want to stress most. And I ask everyone to try this, and people say, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they come back to me the next time and they didn't do it. And I did hair for 10 years in between all this. And I would tell the women or the men the same thing. And I'd say, did you try it? Well, no, I didn't have time. These little earbuds right here are my saving grace. I tell people, for me, it's music. It's music. It's either I can put on anything. YouTube can help you work on anything in the world. Basically, you could build a house on YouTube. I listen to Joyce Meyer. I listen to Eckhart Tolle. I listen to Tyler Perry. It depends what I need that day. All I have to do is type in like Gabor Mate, one of the biggest names in recovery and philosophy, and working with people in recovery and childhood trauma. So the way it's all twisted up together, there's always something that we can listen to, and it would take me from spiraling into listening, playing the scene over in my head, the funeral home, the whole thing, to, okay, I'm not going to do this right now, and the time would get shorter and shorter between the thought process and the action. And Eckhart Tolle always said that you have to find something to disconnect, like the thought and the action. So with using a substance, if you can the sooner you can create that gap between the thought and the action, the better you're going to feel. So what I would do, and put a speaker on, or music. So for me, music can take me, I always say, it can take me back to a disco in 1970 with high shoes and Nothing Mattered and dancing to Donna Summer. Or it can take me to a place of like CC Winans, where I know God's got me. God's got me, and he's just gonna make everything okay. I just have to have faith, and I got to keep walking in it. So, and again, I'm generalizing because the gist of this message is everything that we have, everything that we need is already out there. It's already written, and it's at our fingertips. And instead of scrolling through Facebook and trying, I tell the girls, listen, you want to scroll through and you think everyone's doing so well, you need to stop that. Like, you need to put that down and eventually turn it around and listen to things that feed your soul. The other thing that really, really, I always say this, is to think it through. For me, a lot of the things, no matter what happened, and I would look at all my family in such pain, and that would bring me pain on top of my own, because the loss is devastating. The grief that people feel, like I said, no matter what situation they're going through, it's devastating, and sometimes you just don't know what to do next. In recovery, this pales in comparison to how I felt the day before I came into recovery. Like, I will never feel that bad, no matter what happened in my life. I know that feeling, and that's what keeps me. I don't like the word sober. To me, the word sober sounds like a dark gray, like a living death sentence. To me, it's recovery. It's a new lifestyle. It's creating a life worth living. However you want to phrase it. The word sober, to me, like I said, just reminds me of a gray, damp, cloudy, rainy day. Like, I don't want to be sober. I want to be happy. I want to live a good life, and that's available to me. But if I go out there and I have a drink, I'm going to do all the things I used to do. I should have been incarcerated, locked up, dead a million times over. And if I were doing this today, I'm 66 years old. If I were carrying out my antics today that I did back then, I probably wouldn't be alive as well, you know. So I think that what I try to do for myself and what I try to do to people who will cross my pathway and who I know are struggling is just make these small suggestions. You know, in AA, we say keep it simple. It doesn't have to be, people will need other, they can use other avenues. They could use therapists. They can use whatever it is that comes across their pathway that they think will help them. But we were just talking about in addition, our faith-based communities. So the Armani Project. For certain ethnicities, we have a lot of shame and hiding. You know, like people go to their faith-based organization for their recovery. And Christiana is going to put, or she did put in the chat there, a flyer. And this Armani Project is a faith-based recovery program, which Linda Mahoney has been working on for years. When I was working with her, there was a lot of talk about it. Great way for people to just find their pathway. You know, like recovery has many pathways. Recovery from grief has many pathways as well. So I just can't, you know, I would love to hear what you all think, what you do, what you suggest, because like I said, my process is a lot of it's everything I've learned in these 20 years. It's organizations that I've worked with, it's AA that I've worked with, it's speakers that I listen to. But like I said, the simplest of all and what helps me the most and stops me from getting worse and feeling worse and spiraling into that playing. It's like that 8-track tape and you just keep playing it over and over. Like I said, these little earbuds to me have saved my life. And that is the simplest thing I can suggest for people. And that's something you can do any time of day. At night, I do it when I go to sleep. I put one earbud in, I pick a topic that I need that day. You know, they say at night you do an inventory, but I need some to walk me off the ledge of what I'm worrying about that for that particular day. And sometimes I'm fine. So and sometimes it's just like I still need to hear waves and meditation and sound bowls. And, you know, those are all the sounds that you can hear. Waves. People like waves, people like forest, birds chirping, all that. It depends on what you like. But you have to redirect your thinking. Or you have to try to redirect your thinking. So there's other than therapy, clinical, CBT, groups, you know, there's so much of that out there, but I'm looking at the more organic way. I'm not talking medication, not talking clinical, any of that. I'm just talking about when it hit me, like I said, like an actual tsunami. It just came over in a wave and it just kept happening. And these are the things that I did. And it wasn't easy. You know, it's still not easy. Some days I look at the pain in people's faces or I look at them not talk about it. But I have to talk about it. I talk to my family. I talk to the people that are gone. I have a nephew, the other twin, who is still here with us, my brother's son, the surviving twin. This is how this stuff happens. So he was, you can imagine how he felt, inseparable twins. So he hit a car and he left, and it was on his brother's birthday. So it wasn't a tragic accident, thank goodness. It was a little accident. So I said to him, okay, I've been trying to get him to go to a spiritual center in Warwick. I said, you will have to do community service. So I'm like, here we go, bingo. I had him go to Anchor Recovery to do some service work, and I had him go to the spiritual center. And he sings, he acts, and he sings. That's his outlet. And sure enough, as many times as I invited him there, he went. He is now singing with the choir there, or chorus, and he's finding it that he's enjoying it. He said to me, Auntie, I feel better when I leave there. So when I say we all have a fate and destination, I can't make people do things. But I know if I sit around long enough and I keep saying the same thing and I repeat myself like I did with my boys who are grown, um, God's going to hear me, and eventually, like I said, and now here he is in this spiritual center that I prayed for years, way before for him to get to. And he's okay. You know what? In the grand scheme of things, he's okay. He's alive. Um, I've watched I can't imagine how he's feeling. I know how sad I am. I can't even imagine what's in his head. And I've asked him, but that's really hard to describe that. But this is what you all do all day. So basically, I wanted to put that out there. I want to talk about it, and I want to have more of a community conversation over what you suggest, what you do for your own recovery. I could preach all day, and I don't want to do that. I want to hear what you all do with the people that you work with and what you suggest. So I would rather open it up. I know so many of you there, and I've been in meetings with so many of you. I know we've learned a lot. Um, but my advice is very simple. It's not easy, just like everything else, but it's the simple stuff that helped me the most. Ricky, when I said Donna Summer and dancing, you smiled. So I want to hear what you think.
Oh yeah, that just I think it relates to my mother's one of my mother's favorite singers. So, um, like The Last Dance,
Hmm.
just that whole album. I can't remember. It like brings those feelings back, and so like
Yeah.
it relates to like singing with her, having her enjoy that music, and so it just sparks like good memories and like good feelings.
Yeah. The loss. Is your mom here?
She is, and she is someone
Oh,
who's
good.
gone through her own addiction and recovery and relapse and has trauma in her life. And so like I understand the reasoning. And so I think like there are moments, highs and lows, and those I think Donna Summers being like someone that like brings her joy and you can see how much it's helped her. Um
Hmm.
so that's why like that you mentioning that just like brought all that up.
There are many happy memories. And I think uh I was just gonna say something. You just mentioned it. I don't know, it'll come back to me. All right, someone else. Let me hear what you do. No Wrong Door. I love Bridget. I love that program. Um, my God, I've
Hi.
heard a million people say, I went with someone else because I was fine.
Yeah. So, just speaking for, so Linda, I was actually writing down, I was like, I need to email this. So this is my first time hearing you speak. And, I have 12 years in recovery myself. And when you said Eckhart Tolle, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. Um, I, because those are the things that have worked for me. And it wasn't like an immediate thing. Um, but I found so I don't work, just to clarify, I work for No Wrong Door, so we don't do clinical work either, but our role is more of a mediator. We're kind of the middle person. People reach out to us. It's a lot of actually, the interesting thing that I find is I get more family and friends who are concerned about other people. Um, but in my role here, I also do mental health first aid trainings. And it's interesting, I was glad to hear you say it, because one of the coping skills, I guess, I suggest to everybody, not recovery from substances or not, is
Mm,
YouTube. And I'm so glad to
yes.
hear you say it because I think sometimes I say it and I'm like, oh, should I even say that? Is that like an approach? But I got to tell you, and if for anyone here, like you do have to do some digging, but there is a wealth of resources on YouTube.
Mm,
Um, and again, you got to use your discretion. But the benefit too, and Linda, I'm sure you can echo this, is what I find with the people I try to help is anything I can suggest to people that they can do on their own
yes.
is great. And then also, I know this is obvious, but I teach it in mental health first aid, so I'll say it to everyone here, is I also remind people if you suggest something, right? Like if I say to you, I really suggest you should listen to some Eckhart Tolle, right? I don't then want to say, did you listen to it? So did you listen? Did you listen? You know, because I think, and I know I'm probably stating the obvious, but you know, I think it's important that we respect that where no matter where anyone is in their recovery journey, um, that they still want to be treated like a autonomous adults, right? And that's why I love suggesting anything people can do on their own, because then they can choose to or not. And it's not this like heavy pressured thing, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. And I know I'm not adding anything new, but I just want to echo, I'm so thrilled to hear it, you know, because I think, and we all know this, these systems are so hard for people to get into treatment and to get professional counseling. And I'm surprised how much is available for free. And I think that's kind of the work for us, right? Is to, because I'm fortunate. I work for a nonprofit where I get to spend my time trying these things and researching so that I can share it with other people. So, I just wanted to echo what you suggested. I think it's really, really powerful. Podcasts too. I think podcasts are great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know I don't think that's specific to grieving necessarily, but I'm glad to hear that you also suggest it as a topic. And Ricky, I gotta say, him and I we were just in the same webinar before this. I was like, I feel like I need to meet Ricky now. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Bridget. Yep. And
Yeah.
you know, you can give them I give people a list of things. Like I said, eat the dessert first. If you want to listen to music first, listen to the music first, but just get in the habit of just popping right on there and finding things that redirect your thinking. Take it out of the downward spiral that we are all so easy, we're easily led down that pathway because how could
Yeah.
we not? Look what happens. But just redirect it.
I did have a this is more of a question for the group, and I know other people want to chime in here, but in my previous role, I was a middle school teacher, and I'm sorry to tell, I was teaching in Massachusetts, and um I found just something I want to ask you, Linda, is when it comes to supporting, and you might not know this, but I find we interact with family and friends a lot who are dealing with the death of someone from substance use that I still don't feel, I mean, and I have the lived experience, right? And I still kind of have that, like, I'm not totally, I found with my students, it was a little easier because they were eighth graders, and I found um they like to just have a space and they could share or not, and that was great. And sometimes they like to share memories of that person. They would talk about like positive things, but and I don't know if anyone has any suggestions, but when it comes to supporting family members who don't quite, like we understand substance use, we like you said, you can't force anyone, but I find when I'm trying to help family and friends, it's a little tougher because they don't always have the full understanding of, I don't know if I'm making sense, but they
You
don't
are
have that
making sense.
background. Yeah.
And so real quick, and I want to hear from Ben and Kevin too. My experience was when, just for instance, the people I grew up with, I grew up in the 70s and played. It was drinking and it was cocaine and whatever else we got our hands on. But, there were, I'm just going to say it, my brother, for instance, who did all of the above with me. That night, he was just like so angry. And I just looked at him and I said, you have to stop and just like breathe a minute. Now, I can't start preaching recovery to him because he is not on my level. Like, there's no way he was going to understand or accept what I was saying at that point. But, you know, tread very delicately and they don't understand it. So I think if you can find something in alignment to their beliefs, like if they're religious, if they're, like I said, I've always thought that we were born with a fate and destination. And it's not easy to accept. But, in the big book, we talk about acceptance. For me, that was way before I realized I was an alcoholic. But I always knew that we were born with a plan. We'd be here for a certain amount of time. And that's me talking just straight forward with all of you. But it's hard. it's hard to even talk about it. It was at first it was even hard for me to admit when someone said, well, what happened to him? Well, what do you think happened to him? He's 21 years old and he's gone the next day, like obviously. And once in a while it depended on how people were asking me this. So it's just treading delicately and lightly and just suggesting little tiny baby steps. And sometimes it's okay not to have an answer, right?
Yeah, and I
No
want to
idea
thank
why
Leah.
this happened.
Leah's suggestion in the chat is great. And I should know this, it's mental health first aid, right? It's I think it's nice to ask people, like, what would you like, And
Yeah.
again, I use that with my students, but I'm still kind of new to this working with adults thing.
Yeah.
I'm also certified in mental health first aid.
Oh,
But,
great. You're better than me then.
it's a great curriculum, but the idea of just, I know that when people like told me what to do, I would almost rebel against it and do the opposite. But when somebody was like, hey, what's worked for you in the past? Like, what doesn't work? What would you like to try? It would open my mind to be like, hey, they really care, or they give a shit, about what I want to do and what works for me. And I just think that's ace. That's like number one. But that's it. Okay.
Yeah. I agree, Leah. Ask. What do you need from me? What do you think I can help you with? Right? Just ask, because like we said, when we're making a plan of care for someone without their opinion or without their input, how do we know what they need to do really inside?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like through the years, so many people tried to make plans for me. No. When I was part of my treatment plan, when I was involved in it, I really flourished.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, Ben, who had their hand? Ben or Kevin? Both of you. I'd love to hear from both of you.
I'm older. I'm going to go first.
Okay.
Couple things. I've been doing this for about 20 years now, working at the OTP, and I worked at a detox for about 5 years. There's been a lot of people I've lost that used to be patients. I worked at one particular clinic for 10 years. And so a lot of those people after I left, it was like one a month I was hearing were like dying. So it was a whole process for me to kind of, I knew everything about these people. I'd been with them for 10 years. So it was kind of, when you lose somebody that you've known for 10 years, whether they were a patient or not, it's kind of something that you have to go through and then realize how it's affecting what you do now. And try to pass some of that on to people, that it's a family loss and not just, a patient loss. Because you think about their children, where are their children, wonder how their kids are doing, and, things like that. Also about the YouTube thing, if you're going to recommend that to somebody, there are a lot of really good resources on there. Maybe have a couple of those ready to like recommend so that people don't get off on blogs or things that may not send them in a good direction. So kind of have a couple of things prepared to maybe recommend for them. And also there's an organization in Rhode Island called Friendsway. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's over by the airport. They're absolutely amazing. They have mostly for young folks, but they have it broken down into age groups for grief support. They all meet together upstairs. Whoever the caretaker is, caregiver, whether it's a parent or whatever, they meet all together first, and then they break into their groups. So they'll have like an elementary, middle school, high school group, while upstairs the adults can either choose to participate in a group or not. It's really well run. Not sure if Jeremy Loisel is still there, but I mean, Kyle Loisel is still there, but he's pretty amazing. So that's really a good resource for people to know about.
Thanks, Ben. I've heard of all of those too. And your suggestion, absolutely, for YouTube. Like I said, I try to make a little list. Like my list goes from CC Winans to the Rolling Stones, and of course my dinosaur. A list, but then again with spiritual leaders and speakers, everybody relates to something different. So I like to give them like a variety pack. Okay, just tap in for 5 minutes, see if you see, and pretty quickly if you relate to someone or not. So yeah, definitely. So they don't get lost in, read this book and you'll be fine for the rest of your life. Like you'll be sober in 21 days. Like nonsense. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Kevin, where'd you go? Iwa.
So, I'm kind of lucky in a sense that my education is in mental health counseling, and I'm currently working on both licensing. So, I mean, no matter how much it's part of somebody's counseling session, like that's always part of how I'm kind of processing things and looking at them. Um, and like a lot of the times when I go over I actually have had a couple of patients that have lost people in like the past few months. I've lost somebody in the past few months. I've lost a lot of people in my life. Um, so it's like one thing I kind of always point out to them that kind of that I've gotten really good at echoing like how these parts of mental health care and getting yourself better echo how you like all the things that like there's an analog for it that relates directly to addiction counseling in a lot of ways. And I kind of like basically like one of the things I kind of go over is I'm big on dispelling some of like the idiomized sayings and kind of things we consider to be the case that have come from older ways of viewing how to handle things like grief or mental health or addiction, but have stayed because they've gotten out to the public and now we kind of just have sayings and assumptions about stuff. I mean, the stages of grief really isn't as all applicable as we kind of tend to think it is. It's really for some very specific circumstances for the most part. But one of the things I kind of explain to people too is like the idea of grief is that it's a process. It doesn't look the same for everybody, time wise, length wise, what helps. But I also kind of make a point to point out that it's not you don't process grief healthily when the like the outcome isn't going to be this feels good now or this goes away or I'm able it's kind of the way almost how you kind of if you go to trauma informed treatment it's not about getting rid of this memory or thinking it's like changing your thinking about how now it's a good thing. It's being able to move past those initial emotional reactions. It's not getting that. It's that ability to be able to think about it and talk about it without an exceptional emotional response to it. Like initially, of course, you're going to deal with that immense amount of pain, immense amount of uh, upset or anger that you kind of mentioned with your brother. Like that's pretty natural to happen, especially right at the beginning. But it really like the idea is that you can now like you don't have that reaction over time. And one of the things that usually with patients, I kind of always ask them, like before I explain anything with them, before whatever, I give my condolences and whatever is kind of appropriate. But I always ask them like, how has this impacted your life? And usually, regardless of how they answer, I will almost follow up with what's informing you about that. Because we have a tendency to be like, oh, it's not that bad, or undervalue how much the impact is, or whatever it is. So that one, I get a clear sense of are they actually like opening like actually telling me well honestly what they think, or are they missing something, or are they actively trying to downplay it? And then I can kind of point out because it's not like kind of like Leah mentioned, it's not going to help with me saying, "Oh, well, I'm seeing this, that, and you should do this." That's really uh, being trained in MI, among other things, and I really fall into CBT. That's really kind of diametrically opposed to how I handle things anyway. I'm very much I'm educated on mental health and coping skills, not on how those apply to people. You guys are the expert on who you are, so that kind of allows me to basically get a good read, but also kind of have them realize if there's a discrepancy there. If you're telling me that there's not a lot of problem, but you've called out of work for 3 times, me telling you that isn't going to be as effective as, oh, like what's telling you that you aren't doing that good? It's like, well, this and that. Oh, but, then you can kind of have that conversation. So I really, I mean, I try to connect things to recovery anyway, because I mean that's the core, like that's mainly what I am seeing people. But of course, if somebody's in recovery, it's going to have some impact on it. How big or small is really up in the air, depends on the person and the situation. But um that's kind of like I'm constantly connecting those things together where it's like recovery is a lifelong process. It's not something that just goes away. It doesn't mean that you're always going to be on the edge all the time. That's not how it happens, but there's a neurological reason for it. We don't lose these pathways. They just become not part of it, but something can just light them up and it might not something you realize would be connected. And over time that becomes less and less strong. Like, so I kind of connect these things because it also has, at least in my experience with patients, helped normalize everything. What you're feeling is normal. Why this is coming up now is normal. The universe is a messy place. Our brains are really messy. There isn't just like, yes, we have specialized sections, but it's not as simple as that. I wish it was as clear cut as that. It would make our job a lot easier to do these things. So that really focusing in on, it's a process. It's not going to look good. It's not going to look like there's no clear direction to really go. And um, kind of checking in and going over with them after I've kind of done a check-in, especially, is, where it falls into the problem category. Is it negatively impacting your ability to live life normally, or what you've come to experience as normal, or is it interfering with your ability to follow up on your recovery resources? That's where, like, that's what you want to look for, not am I feeling better or not, per se. So, and I always, like, we have a bunch of resources. Ben mentioned we have a couple of them too. Like, I always mention that if you need them, I have them. All you need to do is ask. Or if you have something, we can spend time if you want to. I'm here. If I'm busy, I'll call back. So I let them know that there is I have options for them with other people, but if they want to, they can reach out to me and know that I have some direction to go in if they want to. So that's leaving the autonomy up to them and really not even trying to lead them in a direction. So I kind of try to combine these things. Sorry, I'm very disconnected and very wordy in explanation. So hopefully a lot of that connected and makes sense like it did in my brain. But yeah, that's kind of my overall process of when I handle grief with patients, which unfortunately I've had to do recently a few times in the past month.
Yeah. Well, you did make sense to all of us, Kevin. We all, we always, so many thoughts in our mind. We hear so many things. I think what you said, I love, and it is a different process for everyone. So I always try to go with baby steps, and even people, my wife would say to me, oh, you got to write, you got to journal your child, your inner child, blah, 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 all that stuff, because she's been through years and years of treatment. And I'm just the kind of girl who's just like, I do not want to do that. I got a journal and I just wrote down, a thought, even if it was a word. Like I would say, and I say to all the girls in the recovery house, I have them each week, just write down some words. You don't have to write a dissertation. You don't have to tell me how you feel. Just write a word down, what popped up today. And then you kind of look at it, and you can put them together on one of those, in those little things that pop out all the words. And this is what you're thinking. So let's take a peek at it. What's the most prevalent? Simple stuff, little stuff.
Yeah.
And like you said, a few of you said it, this feeling is never going to go away. Let's face it. It's going to change. They're going to learn to live with this pain, and you're going to deal with it many different ways. But like you said,
Yeah.
Kevin, as long as it's not debilitating and you can still live your life, and you can't park. Joyce Meyer, love her, listen to her for 100 years. You can't park on the pain. And I can't tell people that right away, but after a while, there's, can't park on the pain. You got, what would they want you to be doing? And everything is within the right. You got, the timing is key. What would your mom or your husband or your children, what would they want you to be doing right now? So.
Yeah, I've had to sometimes, which is, it's effective, which is why I stole it directly from Carl Rogers. I have no problem giving him all the credit. It was in a mock session he had that I saw in one of my classes a bunch of years ago now, but I've kept it, is that I don't remember what the mock patient was saying or whatever, but it was like his response to it was basically, I wish I had the answer for you, but I don't. And I've had to tell people that too, where it's like, especially being a counselor or clinician, whatever, sometimes they do view you, as much as you try to reinforce that egalitarian, you're the expert, sometimes directly telling them, I don't have the answer. Like, I wish I did have the answer. I would absolutely tell you if I had the answer, but there really isn't one because of all that personal ability. So that's kind of important to me as a clinician too, to be upfront and like clearly honest with them too, where like, yeah, there isn't a perfect, I don't know. And it kind of helps me like reinforce that it really is your choice on what you think is the best option.
And when we use our motivational interviewing, we sit back and listen, and they're creating their own plan. They're speaking from their heart, and we're picking the little pieces out of it and making notations, and it's like they're talking it through. It's amazing. It's amazing what a little MI can do with no one even realizing what's happening. So
I just wanted to
thank
say,
you.
well, the idea of saying to a peer or client, patient, what have you, that you don't know is okay. It's okay to do that. I think that opens the door to exploring the answer together. Like,
Mm.
and everyone's answer is going to be different. So even if you think you have the answer, you may not, you know? I know that the more I think I know, the less I really do. And specifically in my work. The more training and education I get, the more I'm like, wow, I really don't know anything. There's so much to learn. But I think exploring it with your patient or your peer and finding those answers that work for them is a beautiful thing, and that's really part of the journey. So thank you for like mentioning that. It's okay not to know. It really, really is.
Mm. Julie, you're smiling. I've never met you, Julie. So where are you from, or is this a personal endeavor? Tell me about you.
Hi. I
Hi.
work with Ben and Kevin at Kodak in Suffolk
Okay.
County. I'm an intern. I'm just taking it all in. One thing that keeps coming to mind is just the idea of when you're sitting with somebody in a session who just lost someone, or there's grieving, not even just lost someone, but just grieving in general. It's just tell me about the person. What do you remember about them? What's your best memory? Just give them the space to talk about them, about the deceased person, because sometimes they might be uncomfortable, or other people might be uncomfortable, just kind of along the same lines of Carl Rogers, like just offering up that space for good memories or whatever. That just popped in my head.
And that's so true. When you're at a service, um, we cry and we laugh. We laugh and we cry. We tell stories. We're laughing when we're talking about all the happy memories, and then we're sad because. So yeah, just to keep talking about it. I've said to my nephew just a short while ago, I said, Remy, don't think for 1 second, because I don't, and sometimes you don't, even to this day, it's like sometimes you don't know when to bring it up. I don't want to, if he's happy, I don't want to bring him into I don't want to take him down, but it's like, don't think for 1 minute, no matter how long how much time goes by. I think of them and I talk to them in my spirit, in my room, and I talk and think about them every single day. I love them so much, and I have them with me in my heart. Like I'm good at keeping people alive in spirit with me. Um, and I guess that's fortunate, because I still feel like they're here with me. They're not present physically, but I know that they're here with me. So anything that I can do to encourage people to do that. But yeah, tell me about them. Tell me about them. And it's okay to laugh. You feel so guilty when you smile, or you're happy, or you want to go do something. We all know. It's almost like we got to sit in that quiet, sad space, and everything is touching. Everything is a mystery. Ricky, did you have something, or were you just
Yes, I'm here with my coworker Aaron. We work at the Women's Resource Center, a domestic violence center.
okay?
And so I think there's a lot of, while that's not substance abuse, it's not like something that we're focused on. I think there's a lot of like crossover between the trauma that someone experiences that we help with and having to find some way to deal with it. And so then it's also like trying to have that recovery while also dealing with this profound trauma, the loss of a life that you saw your future in, And so I think hearing all
Mhm.
these things are super important for me, at least, in working with the clients. Because I worked with someone yesterday for the first time in counseling and for domestic violence. And what came through that was her being 10 days in recovery and her feeling like God was important and was like letting her know she needed to do this. And so, like, hearing all this at the same time, I'm like, wow, this is like, I just worked with this client. So it's like really all connecting for me. So just wanted to
Mm,
highlight that.
good. I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, I also wanted to say something. So for me, I have never lost anybody in my life that directly impacted me, but I've lost people in my life. So I say that to say, because sometimes I feel like because of that experience, I kind of struggle with what to say to people, and like, and I'm Nigerian, so in my culture, I've seen people die, and like other people are like, you know what, don't cry, well, that's God's plan, and even though like we know that, at the end of the day, I don't think that person wants to hear that at that time. And I don't think that's very
Mhm.
compassionate. So like I just want to ask you guys, what are ways that like what are some things I can say to be more like compassionate, be more supportive of that person without throwing that in their face, without saying things like that.
You
Does
don't
that make
always
sense?
say anything, just listen. Listening is huge.
Yeah.
Uh,
Listening and love. I love you. I'm here for you. Is there anything I can do for you? It's there's no there's nothing worse than, I'm not going to say worse, but people try because it's such an awkward thing. People say things, and they're not better off. Let's face it.
Hmm.
They're never better. We're not better off, but
Yeah.
I love you. I always say to people, I love you so much, honey. Like I'm just here. I love you. And I hug. I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
Sometimes people like stand
Um,
back a bit, but
I
about like
know.
2 years. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Nope, nope. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, just real quick. About like 2 years ago, one of my friends, her baby's father passed away. And I was actually at work and she texted me at like 1. So when I was walking out, she told me like, girl, he's gone already. So I just felt like I was so sad for it and I was crying because at this point, like, but they have a son together and the son was only 1 years old. So my head was the whole time like, wow, I love my dad. And so the fact that like this kid will never get to experience his dad for the rest of his life, and his dad was so excited to have him. I just like, but that really broke me. So when I called my mom, and my mom was like, that's God's plan. I had to kind of like come at her. I'm like, no, like, that's not it. Like, go don't tell me that, but that's not right. This guy is so nice. He did not deserve it and stuff like that. But like through talking to my friend, she had more peace about it. She was definitely broken, but she had more peace because but she has so much faith that like she didn't allow that but she didn't allow that to break her. But like what I did ask is, hey, so I don't know exactly how like you feel right now, but what do you need from me?
mm,
And, she told me just like, she wants me to just come over, chill, to go out to eat, make her laugh. It wasn't anything like
yeah,
super major because at the end of the day, like the death already happened. So we just have to kind of like find a way to move forward and find peace in this, even though it's so crazy to even say. Because if I ever lost my dad, I love my dad. Like I'm such a daddy's girl.
mm.
And my mom too, she's cool, but me and my dad, like that is my guy. Like, I was just I'm just so scared for that day. So, I'm just like definitely like appreciative to be in this space and get some tools from you guys that I know I'm gonna need in the future because death is inevitable, something that we're all gonna face, even if we haven't faced it already.
I think a lot of times, like, we listen to respond. Like, we're not just listening, we're like waiting, we're thinking about what we're going to say. And I think I was taught that a while back, and I still struggle with that big time. But sometimes just like your friend said, just being there with them, hanging out, having a meal, watching a movie, having a laugh, like that normality, I think really helps. They know they've lost somebody, they're grieving, they hurt, they may not want to talk about it. When they do, you're there. But otherwise, just make things as normal as possible. At least that's what I've done that's helped me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Leah Tyrone from PSN said a line, and I'll never forget it. So short. Listen to understand. And so many times, way early on, you're listening, but you're thinking about what you're going to say. Like, all right, how am I, what do I need to do about this? No, there's nothing we can do about this, but listen to understand. And I think so
Especially
many
when you do it
times,
professionally, like you're always like, I want to say the right thing, and you know, but it's not always about that. Just be a human.
yeah. And we're
Literally be a human.
also like when what Christiana was just saying is that so many times, you know, I'm a crybaby. I'm not a crybaby. Wakes, funerals and weddings. I don't know what it is. Anyway, we won't go into the whole wedding thing, but the funerals, I can see why. But by the time we get there, it's a shock to us. It's you're just seeing this person. It's brand new. And if it's someone who either, you know, if someone was sick for a while or someone has been so challenged with recovery and just struggling and living in pain, and the person that we're going to wish our condolences to may be in a different mindset than we are right now. And I always say to myself, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to. By the time I get in the door and I see one flower, I start crying, you know. But it's natural. I love life. I think that's it. I don't want anyone to go. I don't want to go. I love the people around me. So, you know, I think it's okay to show emotion though, but it's really hard to, for some people, we all respond differently, you know, and the family is going to respond differently. Like you said, Christiana, your friend had somehow processed it. And I just had a woman in the house, and this is a short story, and she had to leave the next day to go to Crossroads because she couldn't afford to stay in the house. Well, long story short, I got there was something, the house manager, you know, January wasn't kind, had a lot of commotion in the houses, house managers left, all that. So anyway, I ended up speaking to this woman, and she was just sitting there as calm as can be. She looked so peaceful, and she was packed to go to Crossroads. Well, long story short, she ended up staying, and now I just got to make her the house manager. She is a woman of faith. I said to her, in the midst of, I'm walking around in a circle because I lost 2 house managers of 3 houses in like 3 days. So I wasn't really sure how far I could spread myself. I said to her, how are you doing this? Like, I didn't even think about the chaos I was going through. I said, how are you doing this, Jen? She said to me, I know that if God's leading me there, he's going to take care of me. Like, if you don't believe, and now instead of going to Crossroads, she's got her own little room, which used to be a library in this big old house in Woonsocket with the fireplace and the built-in curio. And she's a woman of such strong faith. You know, we all have our own guardian angels. We're all going to have a different faith. Some people don't have faith, but we can find something that can touch on them. And that's why I say, you know, spiritual leaders, guiders, all different people, music, anything that's going to get my mind to a place where like that, like I'm okay. Because I do believe, I went to Catholic school. I've always believed that, you know, God's going to take care of me, but people don't all have that. But this story for this one woman who just looked at me as calm as a little cucumber and said to me, I know God's going to take care of me. If he's sending me, he's going to take care of me. I was like, oh my God, I had goosebumps. I had tears in my eyes, of course, because I was so grateful to see that actually exist and happen, you know. So that's my story. I have told everyone for the past like month and a half about my Jennifer, and you got to have faith. And like we said, you don't want to say that on day one. You know, this is not, we all know that timing is key.
Kevin, sorry.
Yeah, I just kind of back to Christiana's original question too, is one thing that I especially being CBT, like a lot of time, like falling into CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, like a lot of times with stuff like that where people kind of, it almost sometimes will shock us how like, oh, this is enough. Like, yes, there's a plan. Yes, there's this. And sometimes it's hard for us to understand. Is 2 things. One, a lot of people tend to assume that I have this makes me feel comfortable. So I'm offering them something that I know makes me feel comfortable. So it's trying to help, even if they don't realize maybe it's not. But sort of the other things too is if somebody's doing it, and if clinically I'm thinking, okay, they're just doing it to push away the emotion rather than using it to help process it, I kind of either like basically in one way or another, basically ask them, you know, but does that make it like, just because you know this is part of a plan, or you know this is inevitable, you know this, does that mean it's not okay to feel bad about it? You can understand that something's supposed to happen, or it's part of something, or maybe it's just whatever, it's part of the universe. If you're not faithful, what, it doesn't matter, doesn't mean it's not gonna hurt. We're losing somebody we care about. It's going to hurt. It can help us that we know it's part of life, it's part of this, but at the end of the day, we're also, it's okay to feel hurt by it too. That's part of it. That's part of the process.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share quick that there was something that brought up this thought. I stopped going to funerals. I think, Linda, you were talking about crying at funerals and weddings, and I stopped. I had I was going all the time. There were friends that were dying of overdoses a lot, things like that. And it just became too much. I had a woman who I was in treatment with, and we were pretty close, and she was a lot of fun, and like she would walk in the room and like light it up, and she had great, just she was super funny, and I walked into the funeral home, and I no more than looked at her. I dropped to my knees because it wasn't her. Like there was no smile, there was no laughter. I can't believe I responded like that, but after that I walked out. And I've made a promise I won't go back. And I think that's okay. I don't think you have to go to the funeral. I think you can say goodbye in your own way. I want to hold on to those good memories. Like when my father passed away, I was 18, and the last time I saw him, they had him, and I don't mean to be triggering in any way. Went to the mortuary and they had brought him out and he had been um, frozen, I guess, refrigerated. And it was the last time I saw him, and they had him like on a flat table, and I kissed his forehead, and I'll never forget that he was ice cold. And I hate that that's my last memory. I hate
Yeah.
that. So I think sometimes we just gotta like whatever. And the other thing I wanted to just mention was what I said in the chat about healing not being linear. Like sometimes when somebody first passes away, you don't feel anything. Like when my father first passed away, when we had the funeral, my friends and I sat around and shared stories and laughed. And we weren't crying, we were laughing. And then I'll tell you, throughout my life, it's been like 20 plus years, I have had meltdowns, things that have like a picture of my father, like crying for hours. It's just up and down and up and down. And I think we have to respect that, especially with the people we work with. They may not be ready to talk about it. And it's not that they don't care. It's just, it's going to hit you when it hits you. And yeah, that's really it. But thank you.
Leah, your story reminded me of my sister's story because when my sister lost her mom to cancer, like the day her mom died, she just stopped responding back to anybody. She didn't respond back for weeks, and she didn't go to the funeral. And a lot of people judge her. And my culture, I'm Nigerian, they're very harsh and kind of very very judgmental. So like everywhere she went, people like made her feel so bad for not going to the funeral. So when I spoke to her, she told me she's like honestly, I wanted to remember my mom happy, beautiful like she is, joyful, and she wasn't that person, and I don't want that memory to be the last memory I have of her. So from talking to her, that was the first time is I was able to like understand like why somebody will like want to skip out on that, because why would I want to remember you like that when my
Yeah.
whole life you didn't look like that, you weren't that person.
And I said that too because, after my friend had passed away and I made that promise to myself that I wouldn't go, I just couldn't handle it. My niece, my brother's daughter, just died she passed away out of nowhere. She had a brain aneurysm. She was like 22, almost 23. I mean, poof. And I could not get myself to go. I felt so bad. My brother was like mad at me. He's still kind of pissed. Pardon me. I mean, my mom didn't go either. It was just, I couldn't do it. Like I didn't want to see her like that. And I've tried to support my brother and what have you. And I feel like that's the important part, my brother and my sister-in-law. I just couldn't. And I think sometimes that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
like we just have to, I don't know, grief is hard, loss is hard. We got to do what we got to do, you know?
Self-care, right? If we're not here, we're
Yeah.
not going to be able to help other people. And that's really, and I've found that out the hard way.
I think a lot of us
We
have
all
enough
have.
trauma, you know?
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's almost traumatizing to get those images in my head and what have you. I have enough. I'm working in therapy. I'm good.
Yeah. And then we practice what we preach, people, my friends here, and all doing such great work. And thank you, Christiana, for inviting me to like I said, I love a community conversation. This isn't a
Yes.
preach, but I feel better just talking about it myself, and I love to hear what everyone has to say. And I love knowing that other people are using the same simple resources. Like I said, earbuds, I bought everyone in the house's earbuds. I'm like, you gotta just trust me. Get your little earbud in. You'll sleep so much better.
Thank you so much, Linda, for this insightful conversation. I knew you'd rock it, so I'm just like so grateful to have you. And I'm grateful that I got to meet everybody like Julia, Bridget. I already know you,
Yeah.
Ricky. So, it's good to see old faces again. And I'll definitely send you guys invites to more webinars we have in the future. And if there's any ideas you guys have, or if you guys would want to host one, please let me know and I'll be more than happy to have you host one.
Good. And look into that
Yeah.
Amani project. It's fab.
Yeah.
They're having a training.
Yes. Thank you guys. All right. I
All
know it's
right,
over at 1 o'clock.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a good
Thanks,
day.
Have a
Linda.
good day.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see
Linda.
you.
Bye.
Nice to see everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Linda, it was so good.
That was fun. Well, fun. We're talking about grief, but no, it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot
You
of
did.
I think that everyone agrees that, everything looks different, but the more resources we have